Hello and welcome to World News. I'm your host, Diana Skaya. Outgoing German Chancellor Olaf Scholz will visit Poland on Wednesday for talks with Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk. This will be one of Scholz's last official engagements as the German leader.
The talks between Chancellor Scholz and Prime Minister Tusk, which will take place over lunch, will focus on bilateral relations and international issues. Both leaders will also discuss European policy, including security and defense, during their meeting. Wednesday's visit to Poland will be Scholz's last as Chancellor to this country and takes place some 3 weeks before expected new German Chancellor Friedrich Merz is set to be sworn in the first week of May.
The potential date for U.S. President Donald Trump's visit to Poland has been revealed. Trump is expected to travel to Warsaw after May 15th, according to Polish President Andrzej Duda's office.
Duda invited his American counterpart to Poland during their meeting in Washington in February. The Polish leader said back then that the possible dates for the visit are the April Three Seas Summit in Warsaw or the June NATO Summit in The Hague. However, President Trump recently announced plans to travel to Saudi Arabia in mid-May on his first foreign trip since returning to the White House. This means that his visit to Poland will take place afterward, but talks are still underway, according to President Duda's office.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that negotiations on Black Sea security are underway in Turkey. Speaking from the port city of Odesa, Zelensky went on to say that the meeting concerns the coalition of the willing, primarily France and Great Britain. Additionally, the Ukrainian president commented on the progress of negotiations with the United States over the mineral deal.
On Black Sea security are underway in Turkey. Speaking from the port city of Odesa, Zelensky went on to say that the meeting concerns the coalition of the willing, primarily France and Great Britain.
In addition to the talks between Putin and U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, there are other talks in the world. A military meeting on the issue of Black Sea security is underway in Turkey. This concerns primarily the coalition of the willing and the corresponding steps. As we said, there are already enough meetings. Various formats of the coalition of the willing and able are being discussed. Regarding security in the Black Sea, today it is being discussed, during these 2 days, in Turkey. Our Turkish colleagues invited representatives of Europe. These are Britain, France, and Ukraine is necessarily present. And the site that hosts, Turkey. The military is discussing the issue of security in the Black Sea. The mineral deal negotiations took place. They were positive. This was a technical meeting of the technical team, and meetings at this level in different formats, in addition to offline meetings, but also online contacts, will continue throughout this week until the end.
Washington has reportedly softened its repayment demands from Ukraine during recent talks over a minerals deal between the two countries. Now, that's according to anonymous sources cited by Bloomberg. The Trump administration decided to lower its estimate of U.S. assistance to Ukraine since the start of the Russian invasion from $300 billion to roughly $100 billion. The decision comes after a new round of negotiations in Washington last week. Now, the U.S. views the minerals deal as a compensation for the billions of dollars in weapons and other assistance given to Kyiv under Joe Biden since the beginning of the war back in 2022. Now, Ukraine has declined to comment until an agreement is finalized, while both the White House and the Treasury Department have yet to respond to Bloomberg's request for comment. And staying on Ukraine, 3 people were wounded and fires erupted in residential buildings after Russia launched an overnight drone strike on the Ukrainian city of Odesa, yet another assault on a city vital to Ukraine's grain exports.
Just before 1 a.m. local time, the Ukrainian Air Force reported groups of Shahed drones approaching Odesa from the Black Sea. Later in the night, the city's mayor called on residents of Odesa's 2 districts to find shelter. As stated by the city official, rescuers, psychologists, and police are still on the scene clearing the rubble and supporting the wounded both physically and mentally.
A media investigation has uncovered that North Korea provided Russia with millions of rounds of ammunition, bolstering Moscow's war effort. Meanwhile, President Volodymyr Zelensky and NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte visited Odesa on Tuesday to meet with wounded Ukrainian defenders.
NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte and President Volodymyr Zelensky visit wounded soldiers in Odesa on Tuesday. Many of them may have been maimed or injured by shells supplied by North Korea. A giant explosion lights up the night sky in Russia's southeastern Krasnodar region. The Tikhorets base was a major supply hub routing millions of North Korean shells and supplies to Russia's front line, until it was destroyed last September in a Ukrainian strike. Analysts say Moscow now relies on military supplies from Pyongyang.
If Russia wouldn't have that support, I would assume that their offensive would culminate maybe a year or two ago. So they wouldn't be able to have even a marginal success.
A nearly two-year investigation by Reuters details how enormous stockpiles of weapons and equipment have been shipped from North Korea, first by sea, then rail, across Russia. The news agency found that at times over the past year, the vast majority of shells fired by some Russian units were from North Korea. The military partnership came to light in 2023 and was followed by high-level visits. Experts say without Pyongyang's support, which also includes manpower, Moscow would be unable to wage war at its current pace.
They used, the 10,000 troops in Kursk region, and definitely that helped for Russia to sustain, the pressure in the Donbas region.
Russia continues to hit towns and cities across Ukraine, while President Putin prevaricates over a peace deal, prompting a growing chorus to call for the US to force Moscow to the negotiating table.
The only solution how to deal with Putin is to put maximum pressure upon him by using sanctions, serious sanctions, by isolating Russia completely politically, economically, and diplomatically. And of course, by providing more military aid to Ukraine.
Meanwhile, EU officials say they're exploring legal options that would allow European companies to break long-term gas contracts with Russia without paying huge fines to Moscow. This would further reduce the Kremlin's war chest. John Todd for TVP World.
According to reports by the Kiel Institute, Europe is leading the way in supporting Ukraine ahead of the United States by 23 billion euros. Now, the data included military aid as well as financial and humanitarian support. Now, since the beginning of the full-scale war, the European Union provided Ukraine with 138 billion euros, compared to 115 billion euros worth of support delivered by the U.S. Now, the Institute noted that since Donald Trump took office, the United States has not approved a single support package for Ukraine. The last was approved in January by his predecessor, Joe Biden. Simultaneously, the European Union is providing continuous support for Ukraine. When counting solely military support, the United States is still in the lead. Overall, Washington, D.C. supported the Ukrainian military with equipment worth some 65 billion euros. Europe, however, is behind only by 1 billion. Economic partnership with the United States could spur Russia to end the war in Ukraine, said White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. Also, Leavitt pointed out that these economic deals can only occur after Russia complies with the temporary ceasefire agreement.
I don't want to get ahead of those negotiations as well. What I can tell you is that they were a productive conversation was had. As the presidential envoy Steve Witkoff said last night, he believes that Russia wants to end this war, and the president believes that as well. There is incentive for Russia to end this war, and perhaps that could be economic partnerships with the United States, but we need to see a ceasefire first, and the president and the presidential envoy Witkoff made that very clear to the Russians.
Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk said that the, quote, era of naive globalization has come to an end. Economist Witold Orłowski explained in an interview with TVP World that Tusk is referring to the world's growing instability, and while countries such as Poland might be tempted to implement protectionist policies, it has its risks.
The underlying message is we are living in a dangerous world. We cannot be naively optimistic. A lot of bad things may happen. A lot of things that we believed are absolutely safe, the supplies, the goodwill of our partners, the cooperation with our allies, and so on and so on. We are no longer sure. We cannot be any longer sure. So we must be stronger ourselves. This is, I would say, I'm very sorry to hear those words, because that's showing the state of the world these days. But on the other hand, I must say I do understand why the Prime Minister has said so. The pessimistic scenario is that the state intervention is influencing to a big degree the functioning of the firm, to such a degree that rather than becoming more efficient, they become more self-confident in a sense that they do not have to do a lot, because the government in any case will force everybody to buy the services and so on and so on. There is a thin red line between the good intervention and the bad intervention, and that's the art to do it in a way that is good for the economy.
A Russian court has convicted 4 journalists of extremism, leading to 5.5-year prison sentences for each of the defendants. Now, all 4 journalists were accused of working for the Anti-Corruption Foundation, founded by late Kremlin critic and opposition figure Alexei Navalny. Now, Antonina Favorskaya, Konstantin Gabov, Sergei Karelin, and Artyom Kryger were all found guilty of working with the foundation, which was designated as an extremist organization in 2021. Now, the defendants maintained their innocence, saying that they were being prosecuted for fulfilling their journalistic duties. Alexei Navalny, the founder of the Anti-Corruption Foundation, passed away in a Russian penal colony in February 2024 while serving a 19-year-long sentence for, among other charges, running a, quote, extremist organization. Border guards at the Medica crossing in Poland have detained a hacker wanted by American authorities. Since the beginning of 2025, border guards in the region have arrested nearly 50 people wanted by national and foreign law enforcement agencies.
A 41-year-old Ukrainian citizen was flagged upon attempting to clear Polish customs. While checking his data in international databases, it turned out that he was wanted by the American justice system. The local service issued an Interpol red notice for him. The man is suspected of hacking activities for which he faces up to 10 years in prison in the U.S.
And that completes this edition of World News here on TVP World. I'm Diana Skaya. Thanks for watching, and stay with us for more news and features.